The crack of Marcus Thornfield's palm against Elena's cheek echoed through the packed courtroom like a gunshot. 60 people gasped in unison as the pregnant woman stumbled backward, her hand flying to her reddened face, while her other arm wrapped protectively around her swollen belly. The judge's gavel hadn't even fallen yet, but Marcus was already screaming, "You worthless piece of trash." His voice boomed across the marble floors, bouncing off the high ceilings. "You think you can take half of what I built? You've never worked a day in your pathetic life." Elena's legs trembled as she tried to steady herself against the defendant's table. Her silk dress, once pristine, now wrinkled from his violent shove moments before. The gallery buzzed with whispers. Phone cameras appeared like vultures, recording every second of her humiliation. Marcus towered over his pregnant wife, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across her tear-streaked face. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the floor as he circled her like a predator. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Marcus grabbed Elena's chin, forcing her to meet his cold gray eyes. She flinched at his touch, her brown eyes wide with terror. "You're nothing without me. You hear me? Nothing." Elena's lawyer, a nervous man in his 50s, stood up shakily. "Your Honor, I object to this treatment of my client. Sit down." Marcus whirled around, pointing a manicured finger at the attorney. "This woman is trying to steal $50 million from me because she spread her legs and got knocked up. Well, guess what? That baby might not even be mine." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled frantically in their notepads. Elena's soft sob cut through the chaos as she pressed both hands to her stomach. At 7 months pregnant, every emotion felt magnified, every cruel word like a physical blow. "Marcus, please," Elena whispered, her voice barely audible above the noise. "Not here, not in front of everyone." He laughed. The sound was harsh and bitter, designed to cut deep. "Oh, now you're embarrassed? Where was this shame when you were spreading lies about me to your divorce attorney?" He leaned down until his face was inches from hers. The smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the faint scent of another woman's perfume. "You want to air our dirty laundry in public? Fine. Let's tell everyone what you really are." Elena's shoulders shook as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. She could feel every eye in the room watching her breakdown, feeding on her pain like entertainment. Her wedding ring, a 5-carat diamond that once symbolized love, now felt like a weight dragging her down. From the gallery, a woman's voice called out sweetly, "Marcus, darling, don't let her upset you." All heads turned to see Cassandra Rivers, Marcus's 25-year-old mistress, sitting in the front row. Her red hair was perfectly styled, her emerald dress hugging curves that weren't swollen with pregnancy. She smiled at Elena with mock sympathy. "You see that?" Marcus gestured toward Cassandra, like she was evidence in his case. "That's what a real woman looks like. Not this pathetic, clingy mess who can't even handle a simple conversation without crying." Elena's knees nearly buckled. The baby kicked hard inside her, as if responding to the stress flooding her system. She gripped the table edge, fighting to stay upright as the room spun around her. Judge Harrison finally found his voice. "Mr. Thornfield, you'll control yourself in my courtroom or what?" Marcus spun around to face the bench, his arms spread wide. "You'll hold me in contempt? Do you know who I am? I employ half the city. My tech company pays more in taxes than most people see in a lifetime. This gold digging which married me for my money, and now she wants to destroy everything I built because I found someone better." Elena tried to speak, tried to defend herself, but only a choked whisper emerged. I loved you. Love." Marcus's laugh turned vicious. "You loved my bank account. You loved my penthouse. You loved being Mrs. Thornfield at charity galas. But you never loved me. If you had, you wouldn't try and take my child away from me." The hypocrisy was stunning. Elena stared at him through her tears, remembering the man she'd married 3 years ago. The same man who'd promised to cherish her, who'd held her hand through morning sickness, who'd picked out baby names with her just months before. "I'm not taking anything from you," Elena managed to say, her voice growing slightly stronger. "I just want what's fair." "What's mine?" Marcus's face darkened. He stepped closer again, close enough that she could see the anger burning in his eyes. Nothing is yours. The house is mine. The cars are mine. The money is mine. And when this baby is born, it'll be mine too. You'll get nothing. The threat hung in the air like poison. Elena felt something shift inside her, a flicker of the woman she used to be before Marcus slowly crushed her spirit. Her chin lifted just slightly, and for a moment, her tears stopped falling. "We'll see about that," she whispered. Marcus raised his hand again, and Elena flinched, preparing for another blow. But before he could strike, the heavy courtroom doors swung open with a thunderous bang. The champagne glass slipped from Elena's fingers and shattered against the marble floor of Le Bernardin, New York's most exclusive restaurant. Every head in the dining room turned toward their corner table as the crystal exploded into 1,000 glittering pieces. Elena stared in shock at the stunning redhead who just slid into the chair across from her husband, uninvited and unwelcome. "Happy anniversary, darling," Cassandra Rivers purred, her emerald eyes fixed on Marcus with predatory hunger. She wore a black dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and her perfume was so strong it made Elena's pregnant stomach churn. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." Marcus didn't even flinch. He cut another piece of his Wagyu beef and chewed slowly, as if strange women crashed their intimate dinners every night. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as she looked between her husband and this beautiful stranger who clearly knew him well. "Marcus." Elena's voice came out as a whisper. "Who is this?" Cassandra laughed, a sound like breaking bells. "Oh, sweetie, he hasn't told you about me?" She reached across the table and placed her manicured hand over Marcus's. "I'm Cassandra. I've been living in your penthouse for the past 6 months." The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white against the pristine tablecloth. Around them, other diners pretended to eat while straining to hear every word of the unfolding drama. A waiter hovering nearby with a wine bottle looked uncertain whether to approach or flee. "That's impossible," Elena stammered. "I live there. We live there together." "Do you, though?" Cassandra tilted her head, studying Elena like a scientist examining a specimen. "When's the last time Marcus came home before midnight? When's the last time he touched you?" Her smile was razor sharp. "I mean, besides getting you pregnant." Elena's hand flew to her belly, now 5 months round with their first child. Marcus had been distant lately, working late every night, taking business trips that seemed to stretch longer each time. But she'd assumed it was stress from expanding his tech company. She'd never imagined this. "Marcus, tell her she's lying," Elena begged, turned to face her husband. But Marcus continued eating, his expression bored, as if they were discussing the weather. "She's not lying," he said finally, not bothering to look up from his plate. "Cassandra moved in after your second trimester started. You became—" He waved his fork dismissively. "Needy, emotional, exhausting." The restaurant seemed to tilt around Elena. Conversations at nearby tables had stopped entirely. She could feel dozens of eyes watching her humiliation unfold like a car crash in slow motion. Her breath came in short gasps as the reality crashed over her. "But we're having a baby," she whispered. "Our baby. We picked out names together. We painted the nursery." Cassandra laughed again, this time harder. "Oh, honey, you're not the only one who's pregnant." She placed both hands on her flat stomach and smiled. "I'm 10 weeks along. Marcus and I are having a baby, too." Elena's world exploded. The room spun as she gripped her chair, fighting not to fall. "That's not, you can't be." "January conception," Cassandra continued cheerfully, as if discussing vacation plans. "Right around the time you were having those terrible mood swings. Marcus needed comfort, and I was happy to provide it." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "Multiple times a day, actually. Before we dive deeper into this painful journey, take a moment to subscribe for more heartbreaking stories like this." Elena tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. The baby kicked hard inside her, responding to the flood of stress hormones coursing through her system. She looked desperately at Marcus, searching his face for any sign of the man she'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. "How could you do this to us?" she asked, her voice breaking. To our family? Marcus finally looked at her, and Elena saw nothing but cold indifference in his gray eyes. What family? You mean the accident that happened because you forgot to take your birth control? He gestured toward her belly with disgust. I never wanted kids. Elena, you trapped me. The cruelty in his voice cut deeper than any physical blow. Elena remembered their conversations about starting a family, his excitement when they found out she was pregnant, the way he'd kissed her belly and talked to their unborn child. Had it all been an act? You said you were happy about the baby, she whispered. I lied. Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless. I'm good at that. Around them, other diners had given up any pretense of not watching. Some had their phones out, recording the spectacular destruction of a marriage in real time. Elena could already imagine the social media posts, the gossip columns, the humiliation spreading across the internet like wildfire. Cassandra reached into her purse and pulled out a set of keys. Elena recognized them immediately. They were copies of her house keys, the keys to the penthouse she called home for 3 years. I redecorated your bedroom, by the way, Cassandra said casually. The flowery wallpaper was so dated. Marcus loves the new red silk sheets. She winked. We've broken them in quite thoroughly. Elena's composure finally shattered. She began to sob, great heaving cries that shook her entire body. The sound echoed through the expensive restaurant like a wounded animal's wail. Other patrons looked away uncomfortably, but their phones kept recording. Please, Elena begged through her tears. Please stop. I can't, not here. Marcus stood abruptly, throwing his napkin onto his plate. This is exactly what I'm talking about. The drama, the tears, the constant need for attention. He pulled out his wallet and threw several $100 bills on the table. Cassandra, let's go. I can't stand another minute of this pathetic display. Cassandra rose gracefully, smoothing her dress. She walked around the table and leaned down close to Elena's ear. Don't worry, sweetie. I'll take good care of Marcus for you. And our baby will have everything yours won't. A father who actually wanted it. Elena watched helplessly as they walked away together, Marcus's arm around Cassandra's waist. At the restaurant entrance, he turned back one final time. Don't wait up, he called across the dining room, his voice carrying to every table. I won't be coming home tonight. Or any other night. The heavy doors closed behind them with finality that echoed through Elena's heart. She sat alone at the anniversary table, surrounded by shattered glass and the ruins of her marriage, while strangers recorded her devastation for the world to see. The woman who entered the courtroom moved like she owned every inch of marble beneath her feet. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon, and her charcoal Armani suit probably cost more than most people's cars. She carried a leather briefcase that looked older than Marcus's entire fortune, worn smooth by decades of high-stakes legal battles. Elena looked up through her tears, confused. She'd never seen this woman before in her life, yet something about her felt familiar. The stranger's posture was regal, commanding, the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet without saying a word. Even Marcus paused mid-rant to glance at the newcomer, though his attention quickly returned to terrorizing his pregnant wife. Who the hell are you? Marcus snapped, his voice still echoing from his latest threat. This is a private proceeding. Get out. The woman didn't respond. She simply walked to Elena's side of the courtroom, set down her briefcase with deliberate precision, and removed a pair of expensive sunglasses. Her eyes were the exact same shade of brown as Elena's, though they held a coldness that could freeze fire. Elena's nervous attorney scrambled to his feet. Your Honor, I don't know who this person is, but my client already has representation. Not anymore, the woman said quietly. Her voice was silk wrapped around steel, cultured and educated in a way that spoke of Ivy League schools and Supreme Court arguments. She handed Elena's shocked lawyer a thick envelope. You're dismissed. Send your final invoice to my office. The man's face went pale as he read the letterhead. His hands actually shook as he gathered his papers and fled the courtroom without another word. Elena stared up at her mysterious new attorney, too stunned to speak. Marcus was less impressed. Lady, I don't care if you're Clarence Darrow risen from the dead. This pathetic woman can't afford you, and I'm not paying for her legal representation. The woman pulled out a yellow legal pad and began writing. Her pen moved across the paper with surgical precision, documenting every word that fell from Marcus's mouth. She said nothing, just watched it with those cold brown eyes and took notes like a coroner examining a corpse. "Are you deaf?" Marcus's voice climbed higher. "I'm talking to you." Still nothing. The woman adjusted her gold watch and continued writing. Her silence seemed to infuriate Marcus more than any argument could have. His face reddened as he stalked closer to Elena's table. "Fine, ignore me. But listen to this, Elena." Marcus slammed his palm down on the table, so hard that Elena flinched. "When this is over, when you lose everything, you'll be living in some rat-infested apartment with that bastard child. You'll be begging me for scraps while Cassandra and I raise our real family in the penthouse." The mystery lawyer looked up for the first time, studying Marcus like he was an interesting insect. Then she returned to her notes. Marcus's jaw clenched as he realized she was documenting his every cruel word. "You think you're recording evidence against me?" Marcus laughed harshly. "I don't care what you write down. This woman is mentally unstable. She's been having breakdowns for months. Crying fits. Mood swings. She's unfit to raise a goldfish, let alone a human child." Elena's new attorney made another note. Her expression never changed, but something flickered in her eyes when Marcus mentioned mental health. Elena caught the subtle shift, the way the woman's pen pressed slightly harder against the paper. Judge Harrison tried to regain control of his courtroom. "Mr. Thornfield, I'm warning you for the final time. Contain yourself, or I'll hold you in contempt." "Contempt?" Marcus whirled around to face the bench. "Your Honor, my wife has been spreading lies about our marriage to extort money from me. She claims I've been abusive, which is ridiculous. Look at her. Does she look like a battered woman? She lives in a penthouse. She drives a Mercedes. She wears designer clothes." The silent attorney made more notes. Elena watched in fascination as the stranger documented Marcus's self-destruction with the patience of a spider spinning a web. Every threat, every cruel word, every moment of his explosive temper was being preserved in elegant handwriting. "She's manipulative," Marcus continued, his voice rising to a shout. "She trapped me with this pregnancy, and now she wants to take half of everything I've worked for. She's never contributed anything to our marriage except drama and demands." The woman set down her pen and looked directly at Marcus for a long moment. Her gaze was so intense that he actually took a step back. Then she resumed writing, her silence somehow more intimidating than any verbal response. Cassandra called out from the gallery, "Marcus, darling, don't let her upset you." But even the mistress seemed unnerved by the mysterious lawyer's presence. Marcus pointed an accusing finger at Elena. "This woman is psychotic. She needs professional help, not custody of an innocent child. I'll have her committed before I let her raise my kid in whatever hovel she ends up in." Elena's gasp echoed through the courtroom. Even Judge Harrison looked shocked at the threat. But the silent attorney just nodded slightly, as if Marcus had just handed her exactly what she needed. "Did you hear me?" Marcus demanded, stepping closer to the woman's table. "Your client is mentally ill, unstable, dangerous. I have doctors who will testify that she's unfit for motherhood. I'll take that baby the moment it's born and she'll never see it again." The woman finally looked up from her notes. She stared at Marcus with such concentrated disdain that he involuntarily stepped backward. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper, but carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Mr. Thornfield," she said quietly, "you have no idea who you're threatening." Marcus scoffed, but Elena noticed his voice was slightly less steady. "I don't care who you think you are. Money talks, and I have more of it than God. Your client will get nothing." The woman stood gracefully, her movements fluid and controlled. She walked to her briefcase, removed a manila folder, and placed it on the table between them. Her fingers drummed once against the leather surface before she looked up at Marcus again. "Actually," she said in that same quiet voice, "I think it's time for proper introductions." The woman reached up slowly and removed her sunglasses, folding them with deliberate care, before placing them on the table. The face that emerged from behind the designer frames was like looking at Elena 30 years in the future. The same delicate bone structure, the same intelligent brown eyes, but hardened by decades of wielding power in the highest courts of the land. "Allow me to introduce myself properly," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I am Justice Victoria Sterling of the United States Supreme Court, and this woman you've been abusing for the past hour." She paused, letting the words hang in the air like a sword about to fall. "Is my daughter." The color drained from Marcus's face. So quickly, he looked like he might faint. His mouth open and closed like a fish gasping for air. No sound emerging. Behind him, Cassandra's smug expression melted into pure terror as she recognized the name. Every person in that courtroom knew who Victoria Sterling was. The Iron Lady of the Supreme Court, the judge who'd sent corrupt CEOs to prison and destroyed political careers with single ruling. Elena stared at her mother in shock. They hadn't spoken in 5 years, not since the devastating fight that had torn their family apart. Victoria had disapproved of Marcus from the moment they met, calling him arrogant and controlling. Elena had chosen her husband over her mother's warnings, and the silence between them had stretched on to the engagement, the wedding, and now into her pregnancy. That's impossible," Marcus stammered. His earlier bravado completely evaporated. "Elena doesn't have family. She told me her parents were dead." Victoria's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Dead to her, perhaps, but very much alive and extremely interested in this proceeding. She opened a manila folder and spread several documents across the table. "You see, Marcus, when my daughter filed for divorce 3 months ago, I began my own investigation into your character. What I found was illuminating." Judge Harrison looked stunned, clearly recognizing the Supreme Court Justice. "Justice Sterling, I had no idea you were related to plaintiff. This creates a significant conflict of interest." "There's no conflict," Victoria said crisply, not taking her eyes off Marcus. "I'm here as Elena's attorney, not as a sitting judge. My credentials are impeccable, my bar admission current, and my client's interests are my only concern in this courtroom." Marcus tried to recover his composure, but his voice shook. "You can't just walk in here and take over. I have rights. Legal protections." "Legal protections?" Victoria repeated, her tone ice cold. "Like the legal protection that prevents a husband from physically assaulting his pregnant wife in open court?" She gestured toward Elena's still red cheek. "Or the legal protection against emotional abuse and financial coercion. Those protections?" The courtroom was dead silent, except for the scratch of reporters' pens and the quiet whir of phone cameras. Everyone present understood they were witnessing something extraordinary. One of the most powerful judges in America dismantling a man piece by piece. "Let's review what you've accomplished in the past hour," Victoria continued, consulting her notes. "You've physically assaulted a pregnant woman. You've made threats regarding child custody based on fabricated mental health claims. You've admitted to adultery and financial manipulation. And you've done all of this in front of dozens of witnesses and recording devices." Marcus's lawyer, who had been silent throughout the proceedings, finally found his voice. "Justice Sterling, with respect, my client was emotional. He didn't mean—" "Oh, but he did mean it," Victoria interrupted smoothly. "Every word, every threat, every cruel calculation designed to terrorize my daughter into submission." She pulled out a small recording device and placed on the table. "Fortunately, I've captured every moment of his performance." Elena watched her mother with a mixture of awe and confusion. Victoria Sterling was exactly as she remembered: brilliant, intimidating, absolutely ruthless when protecting what mattered to her. But Elena hadn't mattered to her mother in years, had she? So why was she here now? Marcus tried one more desperate gambit. "You walked out on Elena years ago. Everyone knows about your family rift. You can't pretend to care about her now just to get revenge on me." For the first time, Victoria's composure cracked slightly. Pain flashed across her features before the iron mask slammed back into place. "You're right, Marcus. I did walk away from my daughter when she chose to marry you against my advice. I thought she needed to learn from her own mistakes." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I was wrong." Elena felt tears start again, but these were different from the helpless sobs Marcus had provoked. These tears came from a place deep in her heart that she thought was permanently closed off. Victoria turned to face her daughter directly for the first time. "I'm sorry, Elena. I should have been there when he started isolating you from your friends. I should have been there when he began his psychological campaign to make you doubt your own worth. And I should have been there 3 months ago when you were crying alone in that restaurant while he paraded his pregnant mistress in front of you." "How do you know about—" Elena began. "Because I've been watching," Victoria said simply. "Even when we weren't speaking, I never stopped being your mother. I never stopped loving you. And I never stopped waiting for the day when you'd need me to fight for you." Marcus found his voice again, desperation making him reckless. "This is insane. You can't ambush me like this. I want a continuance. I want time to prepare." "I want what you want," Victoria said, closing her folder with a snap, "is completely irrelevant, because what you're going to get is justice. Swift, thorough, and absolutely devastating." She stood and walked toward Marcus, her heels clicking against a marble floor like a countdown timer. When she stopped just inches from his face, her voice was barely a whisper, but carried the force of a thunderclap. "You made one critical error today, Marcus. You threatened my daughter and my grandchild, and I've spent 30 years learning exactly how to destroy men like you." Marcus stumbled backward, as if Victoria had physically struck him. His face cycled through a spectrum of emotions: shock, fear, rage, and finally a desperate kind of panic that made his eyes dart around the courtroom like a trapped animal searching for escape. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning, and his perfectly styled hair was beginning to come undone. "You think you scare me?" Marcus's voice cracked slightly, the words tumbling out faster than his brain could process them. "So, what if you're a Supreme Court justice? This is family court, not federal court. You have no power here." Victoria smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Elena had ever seen on her mother's face. "No power? Marcus, you clearly don't understand how the legal system works. Every lawyer, every judge, every court clerk in this building knows exactly who I am. My reputation precedes me, and my recommendations carry weight that can make or break careers." She gestured subtly toward Judge Harrison, who was watching proceedings with the fascination of someone witnessing a natural disaster. "Judge Harrison here graduated from Columbia Law, where I was a guest lecturer for 15 years. He cited my opinions in over 30 rulings. Do you really think he's going to side with you over me?" Marcus's lawyer grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back to their table. "Marcus, please, we need to discuss strategy. Get off me." Marcus shook off his attorney's grip, his composure completely shattered. The billionaire tech mogul who commanded boardrooms and intimidated competitors was dissolving into a panicked child throwing a tantrum. "I don't need strategy. I need the psychotic bitch and her unstable daughter to understand that I won't be blackmailed." Elena flinched at his words, but Victoria simply made another note on her legal pad. Her expression remained perfectly neutral, as if she were documenting the weather rather than recording her daughter's systematic destruction. "Psychotic," Victoria repeated calmly, writing the word down. "Unstable. Please continue, Marcus. This is all being documented for the court record." Marcus turned toward Elena, his finger pointing accusingly. "Look at her. She's been having mental breakdowns for months. Crying fits that last for hours. She locks herself in the bathroom and refuses to come out. She talks to herself, for God's sake. Sometimes I hear her having entire conversations with nobody." Elena's face burned with shame. The conversations he was describing were her talking to the baby, something her doctor had encouraged as part of prenatal bonding. But Marcus made it sound like evidence of insanity, twisting their private moments into weapons against her. "She's paranoid, too," Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength as he warmed to his theme. "She accused me of having affairs months before she had any proof. She'd search through my phone, follow me to work, interrogate my assistants. The woman is completely unhinged." Victoria's pen moved steadily across the page. She didn't look up, didn't react, just kept writing with the patience of someone who knew exactly where this was heading. Her silence seemed to fuel Marcus's desperation. "I have witnesses." Marcus announced, spinning around to address the entire courtroom. My housekeeper will testify that Elena talks to herself constantly. My driver has seen her crying fits. My business partners have witnessed her erratic behavior at company events. Elena remembered those company events with brutal clarity. She'd been struggling with morning sickness and pregnancy hormones while trying to play the perfect corporate wife. When she'd excuse herself to vomit or needed to sit down due to swollen feet, Marcus had been furious, claiming she was embarrassing him in front of important clients. She can't take care of herself, let alone a baby. Marcus's voice climbed toward hysteria. She forgets to eat. She stays in bed all day. She has nightmares that wake up the entire building. The woman needs professional help, not custody of an innocent child. His lawyer made another desperate attempt to intervene. Marcus, I strongly advise you to shut up. Marcus whirled on his own attorney. I'm paying you to win this case, not to coddle my psychotic wife. He turned back to Victoria, his face red with fury. You want to know what kind of mother she'll be? She can't even remember to take her prenatal vitamins without me reminding her. She falls asleep in the bath and nearly drowns. She's a danger to herself and everyone around her. Victoria finally looked up from her notes, her brown eyes meeting Marcus's wild gaze. Are you quite finished? Finished? I'm just getting started. Marcus was beyond rational thought now, his words pouring out like poison from a broken dam. I'll have her committed before I let her destroy that child's life. I have doctors who will testify that she's mentally incompetent. I have evidence of her breakdowns, her mood swings, her complete inability to function like a normal human being. The courtroom had gone completely silent, except for Marcus's increasingly unhinged rants. Even Cassandra looked uncomfortable, shifting in her seat as she watched her lover implode in real time. Elena Sterling will never see that baby again after today, Marcus declared, his voice echoing off the marble walls. I'll have full custody, full control, and she'll be lucky if I allow supervised visits in a psychiatric facility. Victoria closed her notebook with a soft snap that somehow seemed louder than Marcus's screaming. She stood gracefully, smoothed her skirt, and walked to where Marcus stood trembling with rage and adrenaline. Thank you, she said quietly. Marcus blinked, confused. What? I said thank you, Marcus. You just provided me with everything I need to destroy you completely. Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. You see, every word you've spoken in the past 10 minutes has been recorded not only by my device, but by court stenographers and several news outlets. You just publicly admitted to emotional abuse, made threats regarding child custody based on fabricated evidence, and revealed your plan to have my daughter falsely committed to a mental institution. The blood drained from Marcus's face as the implications hit him. I didn't mean, oh, but you did mean it, Victoria interrupted. And now I have it all documented in your own words. Your hatred, your cruelty, your systematic campaign to gaslight and terrorize a pregnant woman. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the room. You've just handed me the keys to your complete and utter destruction. Marcus's knees nearly buckled as he realized the trap he'd walked into, but it was too late to take back the words. They hung in the air like an executioner's blade, waiting to fall. The sound of heels clicking across marble broke through the stunned silence that followed Victoria's devastating pronouncement. Every head in the courtroom turned toward the gallery as Cassandra Rivers rose from her seat, her emerald dress rustling as she moved with purpose toward the front of the room. Her face had transformed completely. Gone was the smug satisfaction, replaced by something cold and calculating that made Elena's blood run cold. Marcus watched his mistress approach with confusion written across his features. Cassandra, what are you doing? She didn't answer him. Instead, she walked directly to Victoria's table and placed a thick manila folder on the polished wood surface. The folder was stuffed so full of documents that it strained against its binding, papers threatening to spill out across the floor. Everything you requested, Justice Sterling, Cassandra said in a voice that was nothing like the sultry purr she'd used in the restaurant 3 months ago. This voice was crisp, professional, businesslike. Financial records, recorded conversations, photographs, and digital evidence spanning the past 18 months. Elena stared at the woman who had destroyed her marriage, trying to process what she was hearing. What is this? What's happening? Victoria opened a folder with surgical precision, revealing stacks of documents, USB drives, and what appeared to be transcripts of recorded conversations. Elena, meet Special Agent Cassandra Rivers of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. She's been working undercover for the past year and a half, investigating your husband's business practices. The words hit the courtroom like a bomb. Marcus's face went white as paper, then flushed red with rage and disbelief. That's impossible. Cassandra is pregnant with my child. We've been together for months. Cassandra laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. I'm not pregnant, Marcus. That was saline injections and carefully timed doctor visits to fake pregnancy symptoms. She pulled a small recording device from her purse and placed it next to the folder. Every intimate moment, every pillow talk confession, every time you brag about your illegal offshore accounts, all recorded. Marcus stumbled backward, as if she'd physically struck him. His hands shook as he pointed at her accusingly. You lied to me. You made me fall in love with you. Fall in love. Cassandra's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. Marcus, you didn't love me any more than you loved Elena. I was just another acquisition, another trophy to add to your collection. The only difference is I was getting paid by the federal government to tolerate your company. She pulled out a photograph and held it up for the court to see. It showed Marcus in his office, counting stacks of cash while talking on the phone. This was taken 6 weeks ago during one of your business meetings with the Montenegro Group. You were discussing money laundering techniques and tax evasion strategies. Elena's world tilted on its axis. Everything she thought she knew was crumbling around her. The affair, the betrayal, the devastating humiliation at the restaurant. It had all been an elaborate federal investigation. She looked at her mother, searching Victoria's face for answers. You knew, Elena whispered. You knew all along. Victoria's expression softened slightly. I suspected Marcus was involved in financial crimes when you first started dating. When Agent Rivers approached me 6 months ago with evidence, I agreed to help with the investigation. But Elena, she reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. The abuse was real. Your pain was real. Nothing about that was fabricated. Marcus was spiraling into complete panic now. He turned frantically to his lawyer, who was frantically shuffling through papers with the desperate energy of a man watching his career implode. Do something. This is entrapment. It's illegal. They can't use evidence gathered through deception. Agent Rivers smiled coldly. Actually, everything was obtained legally through proper federal warrants. Your voluntary confessions to criminal activity during our relationship are completely admissible in court. She pulled out another recording device, including your detailed explanations of how you've been hiding assets from the IRS and laundering money through shell companies. She seduced me. Marcus's voice cracked with desperation. She manipulated me into saying those things. I never had to manipulate you into anything, Cassandra replied calmly. You volunteered information constantly. You bragged about your crimes like they were accomplishments. You couldn't resist showing off how clever you thought you were. Victoria opened another section of the folder and spread financial documents across the table. $237 million hidden in offshore accounts. Falsified tax returns spanning 7 years. Money laundering operations in 12 countries. Wire fraud. Securities fraud. Tax evasion. She looked up at Marcus with cold satisfaction. Should I continue? Judge Harrison found his voice for the first time in minutes. Mr. Thornfield, I strongly advise you to exercise your right to remain silent and contact criminal defense counsel immediately. But Marcus was beyond hearing advice. He lunged toward Agent Rivers, his face twisted with rage. You destroyed my life. You made me believe you loved me. You let me plan a future with you. Court security moved to restrain him, but Cassandra held up a hand. Let him talk. He's just adding to his confession. She looked at Marcus with something approaching pity. You were never planning a future with me, Marcus. You were planning to leave Elena penniless and homeless while you and I lived in luxury. The only difference is that I was documenting your cruelty instead of enabling it. Elena stared at the woman who had shattered her world, trying to reconcile this cool federal agent with the sultry mistress who had taunted her in the restaurant. The baby, when you said you were pregnant. Par maintaining my cover, Agent Rivers explained. Marcus needed to believe he was getting something Elena couldn't give him. The fake pregnancy made him feel powerful, in control. She glanced at Marcus with disgust. He loved the idea of replacing you with a younger model who would give him the son he claimed to want. Marcus's lawyer finally managed to speak. Your Honor, my client needs time to process these revelations. I request an immediate recess to... Denied. Judge Harrison said firmly. Mr. Thornfield, you are hereby advised that anything you say can and will be used against you in both family court and federal criminal proceedings. I suggest you remain silent. But Marcus couldn't stop talking. The words poured out of him like blood from a wound. This is a conspiracy. They planned this whole thing to destroy me. Elena wasn't on it from the beginning. Agent Rivers shook her head. Elena knew nothing about the investigation. Her pain at discovering our affair was completely genuine. Every tear, every moment of heartbreak. All real. You destroyed your own marriage, Marcus. I was just there to document it. Victoria stood and gathered the evidence spread across the table. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, what we have witnessed today is a complete psychological and financial profile of a man who believes himself above the law, a man who physically and emotionally abuses pregnant women, a man who commits federal crimes and brags about them to his mistress. She turned to face Marcus directly, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had sent powerful men to prison before. Marcus Thornfield, your reign of terror is over. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters and camera crews when Victoria Sterling emerged from the building, flanked by Elena and Agent Rivers. Microphones thrust toward them like weapons as journalists shouted questions over each other, desperate for the story of the century. The afternoon sun glinted off the marble columns behind them, creating the perfect backdrop for what will become the most watched press conference of the year. Victoria raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent with the kind of respect reserved for Supreme Court justices. Her silver hair caught the light as she stepped up to the makeshift podium someone had hastily assembled, her presence commanding absolute attention from every reporter, photographer, and curious onlooker gathered on the courthouse plaza. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, Victoria began, her voice carrying clearly across the crowd without need for amplification. Today, justice was served in the matter of Sterling versus Thornfield. But more importantly, today we witnessed complete exposure of a man who believed his wealth placed him above the law. Behind the wall of reporters, Elena could see Marcus's black Bentley trapped in the courthouse parking garage, surrounded by federal agents and news vans. Through the tinted windows, she caught a glimpse of her soon-to-be ex-husband's face, pale and desperate as he realized there was no escape from the media storm about to engulf him. Victoria opened the manila folder that had destroyed Marcus's world and held up the first document. Marcus Thornfield, CEO of Thornfield Technologies, has been charged with 23 counts of federal financial crimes, including money laundering, tax evasion, wire fraud, and securities violations. The evidence against him is overwhelming and spans 7 years of criminal activity. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks as photographers captured every moment. Elena stood slightly behind her mother, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly, the other clutching the final divorce decree that granted her everything she'd asked for and more. But the financial crimes pale in comparison to what we witnessed in that courtroom today, Victoria continued, her voice taking on the prosecutorial edge that had made her legendary. Ladies and gentlemen, you saw a wealthy man physically assault his 7 months pregnant wife. You heard him threaten to have her falsely committed to a mental institution. You witnessed systematic emotional abuse designed to break down a vulnerable woman's sense of self-worth. A reporter shouted from the crowd, "Justice Sterling, what was your reaction when you saw your daughter being attacked?" Victoria's composure cracked slightly, revealing the fierce maternal rage that had driven her to orchestrate Marcus's downfall. As a mother, I wanted to tear that man apart with my bare hands. As a Supreme Court justice, I recognize the importance of letting him destroy himself through his own words and actions. Marcus Thornfield provided us with all the evidence we needed to ensure he never hurts another woman again. Agent Rivers stepped forward to the microphone cluster. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network has been investigating Thornfield Technologies for 18 months. During that time, Mr. Thornfield voluntarily confessed to multiple federal crimes while believing he was impressing his mistress. His arrogance and need to demonstrate his supposed superiority led directly to his capture. Elena watched as news vans from every major network positioned themselves for the best angles. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. The story was already trending on social media, Marcus's name trending alongside hashtags about domestic abuse and white-collar crime. Victoria pulled out her phone and read from the screen. In the 47 minutes since this press conference was announced, Thornfield Technologies stock has dropped 63%. The board of directors has called an emergency meeting to discuss Mr. Thornfield's removal as CEO. The SEC has frozen all company assets pending investigation. The financial destruction was swift and brutal, exactly as Victoria had predicted. Elena had learned over the years never to underestimate her mother's ability to dismantle powerful men who thought themselves untouchable. "What about the physical abuse?" another reporter called out. "Will there be additional charges?" "The district attorney's office is reviewing assault charges in addition to the federal crimes," Victoria replied. Multiple witnesses, including court officers and members of the press, observed Mr. Thornfield strike his pregnant wife in open court. That behavior will not be tolerated, regardless of his wealth or social standing. Elena stepped forward, her voice quiet but steady. "I want other women to know that they don't have to accept abuse, no matter how powerful their abuser might be. No amount of money, no social status, no threat is worth staying silent about violence." Her words were met with a moment of respectful silence before the questions resumed. Through the crowd, Elena could see Marcus's lawyer pushing through reporters, his face grim as he tried to reach his client's car. The man looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. Victoria checked her watch with the precision of someone accustomed to managing Supreme Court schedules. One final announcement. The evidence gathered in this case has revealed connections to international money laundering networks. Federal agencies in 7 countries are now investigating Mr. Thornfield's overseas operations. This case will have implications far beyond family court. As if summoned by her words, federal agents emerged from the courthouse leading Marcus Thornfield in handcuffs. The crowd erupted as cameras captured every step of his perp walk, his expensive suit wrinkled, his perfect hair disheveled, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Elena watched the man who had terrorized her for months reduced to just another criminal being processed by the system. The baby kicked strongly inside her, as if celebrating their freedom from his toxic presence. "Justice Sterling, what happens next?" a reporter shouted. Victoria smiled, and for the first time all day, it reached her eyes. "Next, my daughter goes home to prepare for the birth of my grandchild. Marcus Thornfield goes to federal prison." And women everywhere learn that no matter how rich or powerful their abuser might be, there's always someone more powerful willing to fight for justice. She closed the folder with finality and stepped away from the microphones. The Sterling family has no further comment at this time. As they walked down the courthouse steps together, Elena felt her mother's arm slip around her shoulders. "Thank you," Elena whispered, "for everything." "I should have been there sooner," Victoria replied quietly. "I should have protected you from him years ago." "You're here now," Elena said, watching as Marcus's car disappeared behind a wall of federal vehicles. "And he'll never hurt anyone again." Behind them, the crowd of reporters continued shouting questions into wind, but the Sterling women were already walking toward their future. One where Marcus Thornfield was just a cautionary tale about what happens when wealth meets justice. The baby kicked again, strong and determined, ready to be born into a world where his mother was finally free.